Warnings of future punishments don't seem real to the wicked. Genesis 19 verse 14. And Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, Up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked to his son-in-laws. 'Tis probable it had been no unusual thing before now for Lot to be reproving and warning the people of Sodom, among whom he dwelt. We read that his soul was vexed from day to day at the sight of their wickedness, as in the second epistle of Peter, the 2nd chapter, the 7th and 8th verses, and probably God sent him there for that end, to reprove and warn them. For God's manner is first to use all fair means for the reclaiming of a people by counselling and warning of them before he destroys them. But it seems the preaching of Lot among them had proved ineffectual, and they continuing yet universally corrupted, so that there was not 10 righteous men in the whole city, and it may be not one but Lot. God sent 2 angels with fire and brimstone to destroy them who came first to give Lot warning of it, that he might escape the common destruction. And God had mercy for his sake upon all his family, and ordered the angels to give warning to them, that they all might have opportunity of escaping, as in the 2 foregoing verses. And the men said unto Lot, Hast thou here any besides? Son-in-law, and thy sons, and thy daughters, and whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place, for we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxing great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord hath sent us to destroy it. Accordingly, in the verse of the text we have 1. An account of Lot's warning of his sons-in-law. 1. He gives them notice of the impending destruction. The Lord will destroy this city. 2. An exhortation to save themselves. Up, get ye out of this place. And 2. We may observe how they received the warning. But he seemed as one that mocked to his sons-in-law. That is, it seemed to them that he was only in jest, that he only came and told them so to see how he could scare them, that he did not believe it himself, but only endeavoured to make them believe that the city would be destroyed to deceive them and make sport of them. Thus the word mock signifies. Judges 16 verse 10. And Delilah said unto Samson, Behold, thou hast mocked me and told me lies. That is, you cheated me and pretended to tell me where your great strength lay, to make a fool of me. Those sons-in-law of Lot, not believing nor giving any heed to what he had told them, they did not hearken to them in flying out of the city, but remained in it, and were destroyed with the rest. There was only he and his wife and his 2 daughters were brought out of Sodom, as you may see in the 16th verse. Doctrine. The reason why men no more regard warnings of future punishment is because it don't seem real to them. In speaking to this doctrine, we shall show 1. What it is to realise a thing, and how they are without such a realising of future punishment. 2. We shall prove the doctrine. 3. We shall give the reasons why future punishment don't seem real to wicked men. But as to 1 first particular, there are these 2 things in realising a thing, or necessary in order to things seeming real to us, believing the truth of it, and having a sensible idea or apprehension of it. First, a fully believing the truth of it, so that it should seem really true. Thus those that don't much regard threatenings and warnings of future punishment do not. They don't know but that it may be true. They don't fix it down in their own minds that it is not so, and in their words, when they speak about it, they seem to take it for granted that it is so. 'Tis what they have been bred up in, and have been taught from their infancy, and everybody where they have lived has professed to believe it, and they have heard abundance of preaching about it, and their education and example makes them say as the rest do. They believe it, as the papists do, transubstantiation and purgatory, because so their fathers believed, and so the Church believes. But they never, since they were born, were properly convinced that it is really true. They have been borne away with the stream of universal custom, in a sort, to believe it, but they never had any proper light that really convinced them of it. Their belief is not a belief upon any evidence shown to their minds, but only a yielding in some measure to education and example. Now such a sort of belief that is not built upon evidence will go but a very little way towards influencing men's minds, and to the making of them show any great matter of regard to it. And oftentimes they do expressly question the truth of it. They say within themselves, "How do I know that there is any such thing as hell? It may be it is only a scarecrow, an invention of men. Men believe all sorts of opinions, and how do I know that the opinion of this country is right, or that the Scripture is the Word of God, or that there is any such heaven and hell as the Scriptures tell us of?" Such kind of thoughts come into the minds of many wicked men that harden their hearts. Second, this is also implied in a thing seeming real to us, that we have a lively and sensible idea or apprehension of it. Those things that we are daily conversant about, that we see and hear and feel, they seem real to us, as we have a plain and sensible idea of them. Thus, by seeing a man, we get a more real and lively apprehension of him than by being told of him or seeing his picture. Those things that we are conversant with when we are awake seem more real generally than our imaginations when we are dreaming, because our ideas are abundantly more distinct and lively. Now the greater part of men have not a lively, sensible apprehension of the wrath of God, and of eternal punishment. It never was set before their eyes and brought into clear view. They have very little of a notion what the wrath of God is, and so it don't appear very terrible to them. They have but a faint, dull idea of the misery of the damned, and that is the reason that, when they are told of it, it don't terrify them. It seems to them like a fable or a dream that makes very little impression upon their minds. We shall notice this in 4 particulars. 1. They have not a sensible apprehension of the nearness of future punishment. If they continue in sin, 'tis but a very little while before their punishment will come upon them. As to sinners that are grown up, that continue in sin, most of them will doubtless be in hell within the 50th year. But they have not a clear apprehension how soon 40 or 50 years is gone, and how short it will seem when it's past. They have not a lively sense of the uncertainty of life, and how little foundation they have to depend upon living to the end, or 1/2 to the end, of such a course of years. And so hell appears far off to them when it is near at hand, even at the doors, and oftentimes when there is but a step between them and hell. 2. They have not a sensible apprehension of the manner of their punishment. 'Tis a strange punishment that is appointed to the workers of iniquity. It will be a torment inflicted after a new manner, in a way that they never experienced anything like it while they were here in this world, and it is a punishment that wicked men have but a very little notion of. They hear that the wrath of God will be poured out upon them, but they don't know what that pouring out of God's wrath is. They hear that there will be horror of conscience, but they know but very little what that horror of conscience will be. And therefore pouring out of God's wrath and horror of conscience don't seem very dreadful to them. They hear that they shall be tormented by devils, but they don't see how, and knowing but little of the manner of the punishment, they be not much disquieted by fears of it. 3. They have not a lively, sensible idea of the greatness of the punishment. They hear that it will be intolerable, exceeding dreadful, that it will fill their souls with misery, that it will be like fire and brimstone, and the like. But they nevertheless seldom think what is meant by these expressions. They never felt none of it, and never saw anybody under this punishment, or that ever did endure it, and so they have no notion how dreadful it is. No, not of the 100th part of the greatness of that misery, and so they are not terrified and affrighted by it. 4. They have no lively, sensible apprehension of the eternity of this punishment. They consider but little and apprehend but very little what is meant by those words eternal, everlasting, forever and ever. They know but little what it will be to bear misery forever, without change and without end. They don't imagine how it will be when they come to be in hell, to think with themselves, here I must be forever and ever. There is no escape, there is no help, there's no comfort. They have very little of an idea how such a despair will sink and oppress them, and will feel like a mountain of lead that will fall upon them and crush them. But we now proceed to the second thing, which was to prove that this certainly is the reason why men do no more regard warnings of future punishment. First, the nature of the thing renders it impossible, but that if it did seem real to them, they should regard it and be greatly awakened and terrified by it. Such men hate misery as well as others. Torment is as dreadful to them, and that they can bear as little, or can bear the thoughts of as little. And the eternity of torment is as dreadful and contrary to their nature as to others. And therefore misery, or the greatness and eternity, and the danger and expectation of eternal torment, would certainly terrify them, and make them as uneasy as others, if they were equally sensible of their danger. If men were really convinced of the truth of the threatening of future punishment, and had a clear and lively apprehension of its being far more dreadful than any temporal calamity, why, they would certainly fear it more than any temporal calamity, and would take more care to avoid it, and would every way manifest themselves more concerned about it than they do about poverty or sickness, or disgrace, or any other temporal evil. If it seemed real unto men that there is a hell of everlasting burnings, that all that die impenitent and unconverted must immediately be cast into as soon as they die, and never be delivered from, it would be impossible in nature and a self-contradiction that they should be easy and merry, and that they should go cheerfully about their worldly business and recreations, while they are in an impenitent and unconverted condition, as impossible as it is for a man to love pain and to delight in being miserable. Second, 'tis evident that this is the reason, because that in things that they do realize, they are more prudent. In other things, when they realize to themselves the danger of any calamity, they are concerned and are careful to use means to avoid it. If men are in danger of poverty, of losing their estates, or only a part of it, in a lawsuit, or are in danger of falling into disgrace, or if there be a mortal infectious sickness comes near them, and they are exposed to it, or if it be a time of war, and their lives are much exposed to the enemy, they are concerned and careful and cautious concerning these things. They are awakened by such dangers as the experience of the whole world teaches, because they can realize such things. They can see with their eyes, and they are very sensible how it would be with them, how miserable they should be if they should be poor, or if they should fall into disgrace and be laughed at, or should go into captivity. They are sensible it would be very ill with them in such a case, and they are concerned and afraid, and are contriving ways that they may escape these evils. This makes it evident that it is only for the want of realizing in the like manner eternal misery, that they be not also concerned about that, and contriving how they should escape it. For this is an infinitely greater calamity than any of those evils forementioned, and of infinitely longer continuance, and it is a more common evil. It is a more common thing for men to go to hell than to fall into poverty, and natural men are a great deal more in danger of losing their soul than of losing their estates or their credit. Therefore, the only reason why they are concerned about these and not about that is because they realize one and not the other. Third, 'tis evident that this is the reason why men no more regard the threatenings of future punishment, that it don't seem real to them, because when once men are brought in any considerable measure to realize it, they are immediately awakened, if they are brought to think within themselves. 'Tis true, God will execute his wrath upon the workers of iniquity, and if they have anything of the dreadfulness of hell set before their eyes, it startles them. Terrors do immediately take hold of them. They are set a-trembling in a sense of the danger of their condition. The only reason why one is awakened and not another is because one realizes it and not another, and this is the reason that the same persons that were formerly secure are awakened, because future misery is more plainly set before their eyes than once it was. We will now, as we proposed, in the third place, show why future punishment don't seem real to men. They are often told of it, they have it described, yea, they have it declared upon God's authority. God declares that he will surely do it, and men live under the preaching of it all their days. And they are instructed and warned privately by their parents and friends, and they hear many reasons sufficient to convince them, but yet, after all, it don't seem real to them, and the reasons of it are these. First, their souls being wholly possessed by a sinful and wicked nature hinders any truths of religion taking impression on it. The nature of the man's soul is contrary to every truth of religion. It opposes and resists all that light. The soul, being of a contrary nature, is prejudiced against it, and the prejudices of nature are the strongest prejudices. This opposition of nature to divine truth causes that the being of God and another world don't seem real to them. This sort of truths don't take root in this soil, because the soil is not of an agreeable nature to it, and indeed is of so contrary a nature that it resists it. It rebounds from it, as seed that falls upon a rock, it don't sink in at all. Sin has a great influence to benumb and stupefy the understanding, and to make plain and certain things seem like uncertain dreams and fables. Second, another reason is they have been used to concern themselves only about sensible things, and used to depend upon their senses only, and therefore nothing seems real to them but what is sensible. The business of their life has been about things that they can see and hear and feel and taste. Their thoughts and designs and meditations have been confined to such things. They have tied down their minds to such objects of their senses, and therefore nothing seems real to them but only what they can see or hear or feel. They don't realize hell because they never see it, and because they never feel it, and because they never heard the shrieks and cries of the damned. Hell is another world, and it is invisible, and therefore it don't enter into them that there is any such place. And if there be, the pains of it be not so much sensitive as mental and spiritual, and therefore it don't enter into them that they are very great. God's wrath don't seem very terrible to them, because they never see God, and because they can't see with their bodily eyes what sort of being he is. Third, they see that a great many other men besides they don't seem to make very much of it. They be not alone, but multitudes of others don't seem to be any more concerned about it than they. Yea, it may be the greater part, and some men that are much esteemed are reckoned understanding, cunning men, men that are rich and in great place, and this hardens them, and makes them to be the further from realizing of it to themselves. Application. the improvement we shall make of this doctrine shall be in offering some considerations to make future punishment seem real to you. First, to make you really believe that there is such a thing, and second, that you may have a more lively, sensible apprehension of it. 1. But that you may really believe that God's wrath will in another world be eternally executed upon impenitent sinners, I shall endeavour to show how unreasonable the contrary supposition is. How absurd it is to suppose that there is no future punishment of sinners by the following considerations. First, if there be no future punishment, then it's a small matter to offend God and break his laws, and men need not be so much afraid of it as they are of offending princes. Whether the Scriptures be the word of God or no, yet 'tis certain vice and wickedness and immorality is offensive and contrary to God's will and law. 'Tis against the law of nature. God, when he created us, he created that law in us. He gave us such a nature that tells us and tells all mankind that vice and wickedness is not right. That in doing of it we do that we ought not to do, and tells us that this is contrary to our duty. This the nature that God has given us tells us, and the conscience of every man tells him, and the light of nature tells, and did tell, the heathen that such things are offensive to God. But if there be no punishment of sin in another world, men need not be very much afraid to offend God and to go contrary to his will, and affront him and rebel against him, and contemn and mock and blaspheme him. I say, if there be no punishment in a future state, men need not be much afraid of such things. God has provided but very little defence for the honour of his majesty, and for the upholding of his authority. Men would not need to fear displeasing God any more than to displease the magistrate. God indeed might bring temporal evil upon men, but we know some of the wickedest of men live a great while and live in prosperity. But if God should bring temporal evils upon men that offend, so can earthly kings bring all manner of temporal evils upon them that offend them. They can take away men's estates, or banish them, keep them all their days in a dungeon, or kill the body, or put it to an exceeding tormenting death. And their displeasure would be as dreadful as God's, if there were no future punishment. This may convince you, therefore, of the absurdity of such a supposition, and of the unreasonableness of men's unbelief of eternal punishment. Second, if there be no future punishment, then there can be nothing to restrain men from ruining and devouring one another. Conscience would not restrain from doing anything that they had a prospect of promoting their own interests by, if they were sure there was no punishment in another world. There would be nothing to restrain men from theft, or robbery, or adultery, or perjury, or murder, or anything else wherein any man had any prospects of his own wealth or pleasure. Mankind would devour one another. There would be no such thing as living in the world. The earth would be turned into a hell. And if you say human laws could restrain, but human laws don't reach men in secret, whenever they had a prospect of doing of it with secrecy, that would be no restraint. And then there would be nothing to restrain them that are the makers of laws, and have execution of them in their hands. There would be nothing to restrain kings and magistrates from destroying mankind, to enrich themselves and satisfy their lusts. Now it is unreasonable to suppose that wise God that made the world would have it without any manner of means of preventing its utter confusion and destruction. It can't be imagined that he that has placed mankind here in this world and governs the world should provide no manner of means of restraining them from continually destroying and devouring one another. Therefore 'tis unreasonable to suppose that there is no future punishment. Third, if there be no future punishment, then God has so ordered things that oftentimes it would really be for men's interest to do wickedly. But it's very absurd to suppose that a wise and holy God should make it men's real interest to sin against him. But in many cases it would be so, if there was to be no punishment hereafter. For oftentimes men have opportunity of enriching and advancing themselves, and procuring their own wealth and pleasure by their sin. There have been many that have obtained kingdoms by treason and murder. But it may be, you'll say, though they outwardly advance themselves, yet they destroy the peace of their own minds. But what occasion is there for destroying the peace of their own minds, if there be no future punishment? What occasion is there for them to distress themselves about it? If you say, though he has more wealth and sensual pleasure than the righteous man, yet the righteous man has inward and spiritual pleasure that is far better. But what foundation is there for spiritual pleasure to the righteous man, if there be no future state, if he must die tomorrow and be turned to nothing? 1 Corinthians 15 verse 19. If in this life only we have hope in Christ, we are of all men most miserable. Therefore, if there be no future state, God has so ordered it that in many cases it would be for men's real and true interest to sin against him, which is most absurd. Fourth, consider how unreasonable 'tis to suppose that such monsters of iniquity, as there have been some in the world, should forever go unpunished, though they die impenitent. There are some that get their living by murder and cruelty, as highwaymen and pirates. There have been many cruel tyrants and bloody persecutors that have delighted in nothing more than in murdering and cruelly tormenting men, that have put many thousands of righteous just men to death, and only because they were righteous and virtuous, have roasted them to death, burnt them upon gridirons, flayed them alive, whipped them to death, have studied and contrived and set their wits to work to invent the most cruel ways of tormenting. Sometimes would continue to lengthen out their torment for 3 or 4 days before they die, and have done so by all sorts, without respect to sex or age. Have tormented men and women, have taken little children and have roasted them to death before their mothers' eyes. Now how unreasonable is it to suppose that such dying impenitent should go unpunished, should die and go out of the world as free as other men, and never be punished for anything that they have done. But thus it will be if there be no punishment in another world. One would think that these things should be enough to make it seem really true to you that there is indeed a future punishment for impenitent sinners, especially seeing that God has so plainly, expressly, and abundantly told us so, as he has, and has given his positive word that it shall surely be so. 2. But secondly, that you may have a more lively, sensible apprehension of this punishment, I'll endeavour in some manners to describe it to you. First, when a wicked man dies, the soul is immediately seized on by devils. 'Tis the soul that the devil seeks all his lifetime by his temptations, and he, by directing himself to his service, has, as it were, given his soul to the devil. The wicked man's soul is the devil's possession. He is his captive when he dies. The devil thirsts for the blood of souls, and 'tis only because God restrains him that he don't lay hold of the soul before death. But as soon as ever the man is dead, God restrains him no more. But then these hellhounds fly upon their prey. These roaring lions dare then lay hold, as it were, with open mouths. As good men, when they die, are taken into the hands of good angels to be conducted to blessedness, as we read of Lazarus, so wicked men, when they die, are seized by evil angels. We read that the wicked servant in the 18th chapter of Matthew, 34th verse, was delivered to the tormentors. The devils are those tormentors. Second, then the soul is immediately hurried down to hell, a certain place of misery, where there are many millions of miserable tormented spirits. There doubtless is a certain place where the greater part of the damned are together. We know that heaven is a certain place where the bodies of Enoch and Elijah and of the Lord Jesus Christ are. So, without any doubt, hell is as much a place as heaven is. To this place the soul of the wicked, when he dies, is carried in among the rest of that crew, a place exceeding dreadful. There is, as it were, the blackness of darkness, a place contrived for misery and punishment. And when he comes there, he will see dreadful signs of torment and horror among that multitude, that is represented by weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. There shall be the appearance of nothing but horror, amazement, and torment there. Third, in that place God has some way of dreadfully expressing his wrath, of pouring of it out upon the soul as soon as ever it gets there, and upon all the spirits that are there. We don't know exactly how it is, but we know it is compared to a fire, to a lake of fire, to fire and brimstone, to an oven, to a furnace of fire, which are made for extraordinary heat. 'Tis compared to thunder and lightning. 'Tis said that God shall rain fire and brimstone and a horrible tempest upon them, that it shall destroy them by continual flashes of lightning, as he did in Sodom and Gomorrah. 'Tis compared to a stream of brimstone, that is, to a continual flash of lightning, and to the valley of the sons of Hinnom, where their children were in a cruel manner burnt to death. There will be an extraordinary manifestations of God's wrath. Everything which they behold shall show tokens of God's anger and fury. They shall be all surrounded with it, and their souls filled brimful. Fourth, the wicked soul will be tormented by devils. They are called tormentors in the forementioned place. Matthew 18:34. They delight in the misery of men. That was what made him tempt man to fall at first, that he might make him miserable. And this makes him seek to tempt souls ever since, because he desires their misery. God restrains him in this world, but there he will be let loose, to tear it as a roaring lion, and to torment it as a scorpion or a dragon torments with their poison. If persons should see any apparition of the devil, they would be terribly frightened, especially if they had not that consideration that he could do to them no more hurt than he is permitted. But in hell he will be under no restraints. God will not restrain them, but he may work the damned soul as much misery as he can. Fifth, there will be no help to be had. We are taught that there won't be allowed one drop of water to cool their tongue. There will be no way in the world to be found out to have any help. They won't be able to help themselves. They won't find any friends that will be able or willing to help them. They won't have any God to go and cry to. Here men, if they are in great distress, they can have this comfort, that they can go and spread their case before God and beg his help. But they won't have help there. God will cast them out of his presence, and if they cry unto him, he will not hear them. Or if they cry to the angels or saints in heaven, they'll all be deaf. Sixth, there will be no times of rest. They will be tormented day and night, and won't have a minute's respite. They would give all the world for an hour's ease, but it will not be granted them. Revelation 14:11. They will have no rest day or night. Seventh, they will know that it will be so forever. They won't in the least expect that ever there will be any end. They will utterly despair of ever having any help or any change. If they could think that after some thousands of years they might have help, 'twould be some comfort to them, but that they won't have. Eighth, they will be in a fearful expectation of the increase of their torment at the day of judgment. This makes the devils tremble, and it will also make them tremble. They then will expect to be tormented in body as well as soul, to have every member and part of the body filled up with torment, and so to continue thenceforward. Therefore I shall close the use with an exhortation not to disregard the threatenings of future punishment, but realise it to yourself, and take care now in this only opportunity to escape this punishment. And let nothing, no worldly business or pursuit, divert you from this great concern. And consider how short and uncertain your life is, and how long the future life. You would not be willing to trust your estate in a dependence upon another man's life. If you had made some great bargain, you would be for having all things well settled soon, because you would say life is uncertain, and I don't know how soon he may die. How then can you venture your soul upon a dependence on your own life, which is every whit as uncertain?